Today, CEO Jack and Tu Tien surprise mother Ly with a dream birthday party, heartwarming journey kick bairn. What would you do if the person who sacrificed her entire life to pull you out of the ashes of poverty finally stood in the light, only for her past to threaten to tear everything apart at the very moment of her greatest joy? Imagine holding a golden invitation to the most luxurious birthday celebration in the city, knowing every single jewel, every candle, and every elegant flower was paid for with the tears of a mother who once starved herself so you could survive. But as the music swells and the guests arrive, a hidden shadow from the past steps into the ballroom, holding a secret that could destroy the family forever. The velvet curtains are drawn. The crystal chandeliers cast a warm, dancing glow over the grand hall, and the scent of expensive lilies fills the air. CEO Jack stands near the entrance, his tailored suit immaculate, his gaze sharp yet restless as he checks his watch for the third time in 2 minutes. Beside him, Tu Tien adjusts the silk draping of her elegant dress, her fingers trembling slightly despite her calm smile. Tonight is not just any corporate gala or high society gathering. It is the night they have dreamed of for over a decade. Tonight, Mother Ly is turning 60, and after a lifetime of unimaginable hardship, broken shoes, and rain-soaked nights in a leaking mud hut, she is finally being celebrated as the queen she is, yet. As the heavy oak doors click open, a sudden chill sweeps through the room, and a tattered envelope drops from an unknown guest's hand, containing a photograph that could instantly shatter Mother Ly's fragile happiness. The journey to this ballroom was paved with broken glass and bitter winters. Years ago, in a forgotten village where the mud roads swallowed car tires and the winter wind cut through bone, Mother Ly lived in a tiny shack near the old stone gate. Her hands were permanently stained with the dirt of the fields, her fingernails split and raw from digging up frozen root vegetables just to feed a young Jack. There were nights when the rain poured through the thatch roof, and Mother Ly would stand over Jack's small bed for hours, holding a rusted piece of plastic sheeting over his head so he wouldn't catch pneumonia. She never complained. When neighbors sneered at her tattered clothes and whispered cruel rumors about her past, she simply bowed her head, tightened the faded scarf around her neck, and walked faster toward the market to sell her meager harvest. Jack remembered the exact day his life changed, the day he vowed to become the man he is today. He was 12 years old, shivering outside the school gates because his tuition was 3 months overdue. The headmaster had publicly called his name, ordering him to leave the classroom. As Jack walked down the gravel road, tears burning his eyes, he saw a crowd gathered near the village market. There, kneeling in the dirt before a wealthy merchant, was Mother Ly. She was begging, her forehead pressing against the sharp stones, pleading for a small loan to pay for Jack's books. The merchant had laughed, tossing a handful of muddy coins onto the ground, watching with amusement as Mother Ly desperately scrambled to pick them up, her knees bleeding through her patched trousers. Jack had rushed forward, throwing his arms around his mother, sobbing into her frail shoulder, swearing that one day he would build a fortress to protect her from the cruelty of the world. Now, that fortress is real, and Jack is the CEO of a multi-million-dollar enterprise, a man whose name commands respect in every boardroom in the country. Yet, as he looks at the lavishly decorated hall, his heart feels heavier than it ever did in that leaking mud hut. He glances at Tu Tien, his steadfast partner, who has been working tirelessly for months to orchestrate this perfect evening. Tu Tien notices the tension in his jaw and gently places her hand over his. She knows the depth of Jack's devotion to his mother, and she knows the immense pressure he carries to make this night flawless. "Everything is ready, Jack," she whispers, her eyes shining with warmth. "She's on her way. Let's give her the memory she deserves." A hush falls over the grand ballroom as the double doors open wide. Framed by the golden light of the hallway stands Mother Ly. For a moment, she freezes, her breath catching in her throat. She is wearing a magnificent, custom-tailored silk ao dye, a deep royal blue that complements the silver streaks in her neatly pinned hair. But beneath the expensive fabric, her shoulders are slightly hunched, a habit born from decades of carrying heavy baskets of wood on her back. Her eyes, wide and misted with tears, take in the breathtaking sight, the hundreds of glowing candles, the towering cake decorated with gold leaf, and the rows of elegant guests who are all standing up to applaud her. Jack steps forward, his usual cold, authoritative CEO demeanor completely melting away. He extends his arm to his mother, his smile filled with a profound, boyish reverence. Mother Ly places her fragile, calloused hand on his sleeve, her fingers shaking so violently that Jack has to cover them with his own hand to steady her. As they walk down the center aisle, the applause intensifies. Tu Tien steps in from the other side, gently holding Mother Ly's other hand, guiding her toward the magnificent velvet throne placed at the head of the main table. Mother Ly looks at her son, then at Tu Tien, and a single heavy tear rolls down her wrinkled cheek. "Jack, my child," she whispers, her voice cracked with emotion. "This is too much for an old woman like me. I don't belong in a place this beautiful." "Mother," Jack says, his voice thick with unshed tears as he kneels before her chair, completely ignoring the wealthy investors and high-profile guests watching them. "You spent 30 years in the mud so I could walk on marble. This room isn't too beautiful for you. The world isn't beautiful enough for you." Tu Tien kneels beside him, handing Mother Ly a handkerchief, her own eyes overflowing. The sincerity in Jack's voice echoes through the silent hall, moving even the coldest socialites in the audience to tears. For the first 30 minutes, the atmosphere is pure magic. The family laughs, toasts are made, and Mother Ly tastes foods she never knew existed, her heart overflowing with a peace she thought she would never find in this lifetime. But a YouTube drama is never devoid of a sudden, heart-wrenching interruption. Just as the waiters begin serving the main course, a commotion erupts near the entrance. The elegant glass doors are pushed open roughly, and a bitter, mocking laughter cuts through the soft violin music. A middle-aged woman dressed in flashy but cheap jewelry strides into the ballroom, followed by two stern-faced men. It is Aunt Hoa, Mother Ly's estranged sister-in-law, the very woman who had kicked Mother Ly and a young Jack out into the freezing rain after Jack's father passed away, claiming their ancestral land for herself. The ballroom goes completely silent. The guests turn in confusion, whispering among themselves as Aunt Hoa marches down the center aisle, her eyes locked onto Mother Ly with intense jealousy and malice. "Well, well, well." Aunt Hoa sneers, clapping her hands mockingly. "Look at the high and mighty Queen Ly, sitting on a golden throne, pretending to be a noble lady, while the blood of her family is forgotten in the dirt. Did you tell your wealthy son where you got the money to buy his first pair of shoes, Ly? Did you tell him whose life you ruined to get here?" Jack rises to his feet instantly, his face darkening with a dangerous, lethal anger. He steps in front of his mother, shielding her from Aunt Hoa's venomous glare. "Who let this woman in?" Jack demands, his voice low and vibrating with authority. "Security, drag her out immediately." Two large security guards rush forward, grabbing Aunt Hoa's arms, but she violently twists away, pulling a crumpled, faded legal document from her purse and waving it in the air for everyone to see. "Touch me and I'll call the press." Aunt Hoa screams, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. "Your dynamic CEO son wants to hide the truth. 30 years ago, when your father died, you didn't just leave the village. You stole the family's emergency medical fund. My daughter, your own niece, went blind because we couldn't afford her surgery. All because you took that money to run away to the city and buy your son's way into a fancy school. You built your empire on a blind girl's tears. A collective gasp ripples through the audience. The open loop from decades ago is suddenly ripped open. The guests begin whispering frantically, looking at Mother Ly with newfound suspicion. Jack freezes, his mind racing. He looks back at his mother, expecting her to deny it, expecting her to rage against the lie. But Mother Ly does not speak. She sits frozen on her velvet chair, her face completely drained of color, her lips trembling as she stares at the faded document in Aunt Hoa's hand. The silence stretching between them is agonizing. Every second feels like an eternity as the audience watches the matriarch of the CEO's family crumble under the weight of an ancient accusation. Tu Tien senses the immediate danger to the family's reputation and, more importantly, to Mother Ly's fragile heart. She steps forward, her eyes scanning Aunt Hoa's defensive posture and the precise, malicious timing of her arrival. "Aunt Hoa," Tu Tien says, her voice calm, measured, and cutting through the panic. "This is a private family celebration. If you have legal claims, they belong in a court of law, not on a mother's birthday. Look at the document you are holding. The date on that paper is the exact day Jack's father passed away. Do you really want to talk about who took what on that tragic day?" Aunt Hoa sneers, stepping closer, smelling blood in the water. "Defend her all you want, girl. The truth is written in the mud of our village. Ly took the money. She ran. And now she lives like a billionaire while we suffer. Ask her. Let her look her own son in the eye and deny it." Jack turns slowly to face his mother. The silence in the room is suffocating. The violinists have stopped playing. The waiters stand frozen with silver trays. Jack's heart breaks as he sees the immense guilt and pain radiating from his mother's fragile frame. "Mother," Jack whispers, his voice trembling, a stark contrast to his powerful CEO persona. "Tell me it's not true. Tell them you didn't do it." Mother Ly covers her face with her wrinkled hands, her shoulders shaking violently as deep, agonizing sobs tear from her chest. "I'm sorry, Jack. I'm so sorry." She weeps, her voice a fragile thread of pure agony. "I did take the box. I took the money and I ran. I knew what would happen to your cousin, but you were dying, Jack. You had a fever that wouldn't break for 3 weeks. The village doctor said your lungs were failing. I begged Hoa for help. I knelt until my knees were raw, but she locked her door and left us in the mud. I had no choice. I had to choose between my niece's sight or my son's life. I chose you, Jack. I chose you." The revelation hits the ballroom like a physical blow. The absolute stillness that follows is profound. The guests are transfixed by the raw, devastating truth of a mother's impossible choice. Aunt Hoa laughs triumphantly, pointing a finger at the weeping old woman. "See, she admits it. She's a thief. A selfish, heartless thief." Jack stands paralyzed, the weight of his mother's 30-year-old sacrifice crashing down upon him. He realizes that every success he has ever achieved, every luxury he has ever enjoyed, was bought with the heaviest coin of all his mother's willingness to bear the sin of a thief to keep him alive. He looks at his mother's bent back, her silver hair, her hands that worked until they bled, and a profound, overwhelming wave of love and sorrow washes over his soul. Before Jack can move, Tu Tien steps into the center of the storm. She does not look at the whispering guests. She walks directly to Aunt Hoa, her gaze fierce and unyielding. "You call her a thief, Aunt Hoa?" Tu Tien's voice rings out with powerful emotion, captivating every person in the room. "Let me tell you what I see. I see a mother who was pushed into the darkest corner of hell by her own family. I see a woman who begged for mercy and received none. You held the key to that medical fund, yet you watched your brother's child fade into death without offering a single cent. Mother Ly didn't steal for greed. She broke a rule to save a life that you were willing to throw away. Tu Tien turns to the audience, her arms extended toward Mother Ly. Look at this woman. For 30 years, she carried this shame in silence. She never bought herself a new dress. She never ate a full meal until her son was fed, and she bore your curses without a single word of defense. She has paid that debt 1,000 times over with her blood, her sweat, and her broken youth. If there is a sin here tonight, it is the sin of a family that forces a mother to choose between two dying children. The guests are visibly moved, many of them nodding in agreement, the tide of judgment turning completely into deep empathy. Jack steps forward, his eyes burning with a fierce, protective devotion. He walks past Aunt Hoa as if she doesn't even exist, and kneels once more at his mother's feet. He takes her trembling, tear-stained hands and presses them against his forehead. "Mother," Jack says, his voice booming with absolute certainty, ensuring every person in the hall hears his words. "You did not commit a crime. You performed a miracle. You carried a sin that belonged to the people who abandoned us. From this day forward, you will never bow your head again. Your debt is paid, and your son is here to protect you." Jack stands up, turning to face Aunt Hoa, his expression turning to stone. He pulls a sleek black checkbook from his jacket pocket, pens a figure with swift, decisive strokes, and rips the paper out. He walks over and presses the check firmly into Aunt Hoa's hand. "This is 5 times the amount of the original medical fund, adjusted for 30 years of inflation and medical expenses for my cousin. Take it, leave this room, and if you ever approach my mother again, I will use every legal and financial resource at my disposal to ensure you spend the rest of your days in a cell. Now, get out of my sight." Aunt Hoa looks down at the staggering amount written on the check, her greed instantly warring with her malice. Seeing the absolute fury in Jack's eyes and the security guards closing in, she clutches the check to her chest, turns on her heel, and hurries out of the ballroom, her sycophants following closely behind. The heavy oak doors slam shut, sealing out the dark past forever. The room remains quiet for a long moment, the emotional tension slowly draining away, replaced by a profound, reverent warmth. Jack turns back to his mother, who is still weeping softly, her head bowed in lingering shame. Jack looks at Tu Tien, who smiles through her tears and nods gently. Together, they walk back to the golden throne. Jack takes a deep breath, picking up a microphone from the main table. He looks out at the gathered guests, his voice steady and full of pride. "Tonight was meant to be a celebration of my mother's birthday," he says, his gaze locking onto Mother Ly's eyes. "But it has become something far greater. It has become a celebration of a mother's boundless, unconditional love. A love that knows no fear, no boundaries, and no sacrifice too great. Mother, the past is gone. The tears you cried in the mud are the seeds of the life we have today. Please, let us celebrate you tonight." The ballroom erupts into a thunderous, standing ovation. Guests are openly wiping their eyes, clinking their glasses, and applauding the frail woman who stands as a titan of sacrifice. Mother Ly looks up, her eyes meeting Jack's, then Tu Tien's. For the first time in 30 years, the crushing weight of guilt vanishes from her gaze. A beautiful, radiant smile spreads across her face, smoothing out the lines of worry that had etched themselves into her skin for decades. Tu Tien brings over the massive birthday cake, its golden candles flickering brightly in the warm room. Jack kneels beside his mother, wrapping a strong protective arm around her shoulders. "Make a wish, Mother," he whispers softly. Mother Ly closes her eyes, her hands clasped together in a silent prayer of profound gratitude. She doesn't wish for wealth, or status, or luxury. She opens her eyes, looks at her son who is safe and strong, and at Tu Tien who stands as a beacon of love beside them. She blows out the candles, And as the smoke drifts gracefully into the crystal-lit ceiling, the entire room fills with the sound of laughter, music, and the pure, unadulterated joy of a family that survived the storm and finally found their peace.